This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
I call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Tuesday, December the 17th. Supervisors, please rise for honoring the flag and a moment of reflection by Supervisor Leary. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we approach the new year, let us remember that when we work together, no problem is truly insurmountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is call the roll. Supervisors, please take your... When you're done laughing with Supervisor Leary.
Well done.
Well done. Take your keypads in hand and indicate your presence. Supervisor Knight. And Supervisor yeah. Sorry. And Supervisor Henning. Oh, Supervisor Anton. Use your keypad, it'll work. We have a problem with Supervisor Anton's microphone tonight.
He doesn't have a keypad.
Well, that makes it harder, doesn't it? That was a test, and you passed.
We were testing something.
Supervisor Dunning. He's here somewhere.
He's going to get another meeting.
Oh, okay. Supervisor Dunning's here. Okay. All right, so we have 25 present. We have a quorum. Thank you. Next item is approval of the Journal of Proceedings of December 3rd, 2019. Motion by Supervisor Lavelle, second by Supervisor Gatlin. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the Journal of Proceedings? I see none. We will do this by voice vote. All those in favor of approving the Journal of Proceedings indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. The next item is appointments. This is a little out of order, but it's because we're approving the appointment of a supervisor. So what we're doing tonight is confirming the appointment of Dr. Catherine Schneider to fill the County Board Supervisor District 22 seat. I have appointed her. The board must approve the appointment. So could I have a motion by Supervisor Leary and a second by Supervisor Kronk to approve the appointment of Catherine Schneider for District 22. Any discussion, questions? We'll do this with the keypad. Please take your keypads in hand and vote. You are voting on the approval of Dr. Schneider as supervisor.
I'm trying.
I think it worked there. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. And at this time, our clerk will administer the oath to Dr. Schneider.
Supervisor Schneider. Please raise your right hand. Please state your name.
I, Catherine Schneider,
Having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor District 22,
having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor for District 22,
swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of your ability.
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office to the best of my ability.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Supervisor Schneider has some prepared comments that she'd like to make at this time.
I'm honored to be among you, to be able to serve as well as to be served by my county government. Because of my blindness and your sightedness, interactions may feel awkward at first. I've got 3 asks for you. Number 1, speak to me and tell me who you are. Recognizing people by their voices is not one of my superpowers. If you just smile, unless you had a lot of garlic for dinner, I will not know you're there. Number 2, offer help if you think I might need it. And I'll appreciate the offer even if I say no thanks. I will ask for help, like rides to meetings that we're both going to. The state of Wisconsin, in its wisdom, will not give Luna a driver's license. We all need to bum rides. I may also ask for clarification of things on the screen occasionally. Number 3, if you want to pet Luna, ask first. This is her first and last county board meeting. She will retire in a couple of weeks, and I will miss January's meeting because I'll be in New Jersey training with a new dog. When I return, I'll train the new dog for Eau Claire, so you may need to coach me a little bit more as I train her. Together, we'll get through this stuff and we will show other counties something about valuing the services of all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. We have 3 persons who have signed up for public comment. First is Kathy Campbell. Please come forward. Kathy Campbell. There she is. And followed by Blythe Wachter. Would you just stand ready over here?
I am going to wait to a future meeting.
Okay.
Please take my name.
All right. Following her would be Christy Hart.
Yep, I'll wait. It's directional, you just aim it towards you.
Christy Hart. Oh, so we have 1 comment. Please identify yourself.
All right, I'm Kathy Campbell. I live 7655 Burnell Drive in the town of Seymour. The siting committee for the proposed landfill expansion, with representatives from the city, county, and town of Seymour, found out recently that they have been out of step with what other municipalities receive from advanced disposal. To rectify that, the committee requested a 228% increase for direct payments in the proposal, but no impact compensation for 7 Mile Creek neighbors. We are in favor of the municipalities receiving a large increase, but to overlook the impact on us is confusing and concerning. Since the landfill was purchased from the county, it has continued to expand and increasingly impacts us. We have experienced more unpleasant odors, noise, litter, dirt in the air and on our homes, runoff, impairing 7 Mile Creek, heavy traffic, unsightly view. I know you all can imagine the adverse conditions we face. In addition, we have been highly concerned about declining property values. Environmental and real estate studies confirm these problems occur for those living within 1 mile of a landfill. With another expansion and prospective sale to Waste Management soon, we're more insistent that the siting committee address these problems for us now. 12 Wisconsin cities and towns in 5 counties have used the statutory authority and placed local controls on the landfill to improve conditions, compensate, and protect property values of residents within 1 mile. It's a fact that living within 1 mile of a landfill diminishes our quality of life. It is stated as the reason for compensation in contracts by advanced disposal. We have been struggling with the effects and expenses of living with the landfill for more than 20 years. While siting committees in other areas acted on behalf of their residents, town chairmen from those communities have said to us, the people need this. The committee just needs to ask for it. This siting committee needs to decide a fair amount for sociological payments and negotiate with Advanced for them. We need property value guarantees that are fair for us, won't destroy our neighborhood, and discourages Advanced to further devalue and blight our area. We want the siting committee to choose contract terms for property value that are similar to the one for the residents surrounding Cranberry Creek landfill in Wood County. That contract is much more favorable to us than the one the committee has proposed and aligns with the 7 Mile Creek petition that was presented back to the siting committee in September. What we need now is what has been commonplace in other communities for over 20 years. Our community can no longer afford to keep dismissing and overlooking this growing problem. Please ask the siting committee to act fairly, do what's right and just for the people of the 7 Mile Creek neighborhood. You have a signed statement from the neighborhood in your packet to review. If anyone has questions, please call me. And you're all welcome to attend the public meeting that's going to be held in the town of Seymour, January 16th at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other names of persons wishing to make comment. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to present comment? Anyone else? Thank you. We will now end the public comment. Go on to item number 6, reports to the county board, beginning with oral reports. And the first is the very pleasurable honoring of our 2 judges. Judge Schumacher.
So thanks for giving us just a few moments of your valuable time. We appreciate this. I happen to be the chair of the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. Most of you have heard of it. CJCC is what it goes as. I also suspect that many of you really don't know what it is or what we do or who it consists of, and let me give you just a little bit of a summary. Briefly, it involves pretty much everyone who's involved in the criminal justice system here in this county. Includes representatives from the district attorney's office, public defender's office, corrections, courts, law enforcement, clerk of court, administration, human services. This county board and public representatives participate as well. And the idea is to work collaboratively on behalf of the community and for the benefit of the county. And I must say, we do that incredibly well. It's not that we don't have moments from time to time, but the collaboration and cooperation among the members of that council is just incredible. I can tell you that it's not the same in every jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions have huge squabbles with these kinds of committees, and committees have failed because of the lack of cooperation. So why are we here tonight? Frankly, to celebrate some of our successes and thank Judges Thomas Barland and Benjamin Proctor for their vision and leadership of the CJCC. So how we got here, recently some of us kind of sat back and reflected upon what we've done as a council over the past number of years, since 2008 when we started, and we had kind of a wow moment. Wow, look at the things that we've done over these years. And so I need to tell you that I'm not going to go into great detail about all of these things, but we've garnered statewide and national attention for some of our work, and have presented to and trained many other jurisdictions in the things that we have learned and implemented here in this county. And I'm just going to mention a couple of things. In 2010, the council passed a resolution supporting the Community Transition Center. That is such an invaluable resource now, given the methamphetamine epidemic from which we suffer. Also in 2010, we formed the Evidence-Based Decision-Making Policy Team, a mouthful, but it's also a group that really is the foundation of many of the innovative programs and procedures that we now follow in Eau Claire County and have become the norm here. The Eau Claire County CJCC was asked in 2010 to become one of 12 members of the national CJCC. In 2011, we established our diversion program that diverts low-risk offenders out of the criminal justice system entirely. 2013, this board approved the funding for a full-time data analyst. I can't tell you how important that was. We can tell through data whether things that we are doing are effective or not. We can see trends. We can get a jump on things by using that data. So then in 2018, we established a work group of the CJCC to look at the jail population. That resulted in the 84-page systems analysis on jail population completed this past summer. You should all be familiar with that document. It was so detailed. So what do Judges Barland and Proctor have to do with all of this? Simply said, they were instrumental in developing a culture here in Eau Claire County, which proved to be the foundation of an active and truly a vibrant CJCC. They fostered a collegiality among criminal justice professionals that led to accomplishments that would have been impossible in a more hostile type of environment. So what I'd like to do is give you just a little bit of background about Judges Barland and Proctor, present them with a couple of nice awards that we put together for them, and if they wish, give them an opportunity to make a brief comment as well. The Honorable Thomas Barland presided here in Eau Claire County between 1967 and 2000. Following retirement, he remained active in the state judiciary, serving frequently as a reserve judge on the State Judicial Commission and various other committees. Judge Barland's become well-known and highly respected throughout the state and national judicial community as one of the preeminent trial court judges. He was involved in state and national judicial education, innovation, and administration. He was Wisconsin Judge of the Year in 1996. We were fortunate to have him as a citizen member of the CJCC for many years. He was instrumental in establishing the Jail Database Subcommittee. I could go on and on. The Honorable Benjamin Proctor presided here in Eau Claire County for 23 years, from 1988 to 2011. He sometimes said, the bottom line is to try to do what is right for both the parties and the community. For Judge Proctor, doing what is right sometimes meant developing new programs that addressed root causes of crime and helped the system to function more effectively and efficiently. 3 of those projects included starting the CJCC and treatment courts for single mothers and veterans. And yes, in 2010, Judge Proctor was also named Wisconsin Judge of the Year. So let us warmly welcome Judges Barland and Proctor. Judge Barland, I have this for you. Do you wish to make any comments?
I think this county is going in the right direction, and I admired the work that's underway, and I would say keep going.
Judge Proctor, for you too, a recognition from the CJCC.
Thanks.
Comment?
Well, first of all, I'm a lot younger than Judge Barland. But anyway, he was one of my mentors, and without him. There wouldn't be a good judiciary in Eau Claire. And forgive me, but I've been thinking about this for a long time. Anyway, I was proud to serve as a judge. It was the best thing that I ever did, and most of that was because of the people that I worked with. We tried to come up with programs that were different than the previous programs, i.e., commit a crime, go to jail, commit a crime, pay a hefty fine, you know, that kind of thing. We said, some of these people, if they just stopped drinking or using drugs and had a common sense probation agent, we can keep them in their families, we can keep them in their jobs, and we always know that if they violate the rules, then we can punish them in ways that are productive, i.e., you get it when you go to jail for a little while and then get out. And we were very successful with that. I was a little bit surprised at how successful we were, but that was one of the things I was most proud of. Also, the wonderful people that work in the courts is unbelievable. The talent, the humility, the understanding is just incredible. They want to do what's right. And what else could you ask for? So I thank all of you that helped me be a better judge. Thank you.
We're done.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is a presentation on the implementation of Wisconsin Statute 980 in Eau Claire County. Assistant Corporation Counsel Eaton.
Good evening, everyone. My tie, I think, reflects my mood related to the topic I'm about to discuss. I got it from Keith's names. Yeah. My name is Rick Eaton. I'm Assistant Corporation Counsel for Eau Claire County. Mr. Sullivan, my wonderful boss on the end here. I'm here to talk about 2017 Act 184, changes to Wisconsin Statute Chapter 980. The county has been mandated to form a temporary release committee. This law is related to the release of sexually violent offenders or those who have been adjudicated sexually violent offenders and their release into the community. The county is tasked with forming a committee that's comprised of someone from my office, Department of Human Services locally, the State Department of Human Services, as well as someone from probation and parole, and we're also supposed to consult with law enforcement. So I think some supervisors here have been to some of our meetings. I think Supervisor Wilkie, Gibson, DeLuca, Spates. You guys have been to some of our meetings and seen the difficult work that the committee is tasked with. The role of the committee is to identify appropriate residential options for these people that are being released from the Sand Ridge Treatment Facility into the community. The reason for the change in the law, just briefly, there were counties not placing individuals, or rather the courts and the state couldn't find placements within the county of residence, so they had to look outside their county of residence. That resulted in a change in the law mandating that counties place their own residents in their own counties. So at this time, we do have right now 2 individuals that we are supposed to be placing in the community. We've got quite a few people on our committee, and we've had some lively meetings. It's quite a sensitive nature. We're supposed to locate, again, appropriate residential options. I did forget to mention that planning and development is also involved, and Mr. Esslinger, who's here tonight, has done a lot of work in that regard with mapping, trying to find pockets within Eau Claire County that meet the statutory guidelines of where we can place these offenders. Those guidelines they have to be 1,500 feet or cannot be within 1,500 feet of any schools, daycares, churches. Depending on their level of offense, it could be they can't be adjacent to homes with children under a certain age. Again, we've been meeting since October of 2018. At this time, the one that we have is in a temporary placement. We still have to find a permanent placement, and we have another one and a deadline coming up in February. If the committee does not find placement, we can be fined up to $1,000 a day. The county can. That's set out in statute. There was recent proposed legislation that was vetoed that would set aside some of the statutory guidelines that we have to abide by. So I don't see any changes on that front. So we're going to have to continue to search for placement. I think one of the main reasons I'm here is because it's going to come around where we're looking at potentially county-owned property. This is something that's going on across the state. There are multiple counties struggling with this. There's active litigation with the State Public Defender's Office and motions for sanctions or damages against various counties. Thus far, no county has been ordered to pay a fine of any sort. There's nothing in the law that says there's a good faith exception that you're trying, so we're not going to fine you. But the courts have not thus far ordered any sanctions or damages from the counties. But I know of a couple of motions in other counties where they're trying to force the county to provide property, build a placement. So this is something that is going to come up. And I'm sure it's been on all of your radars at one point or another. It's been in the news. The state is obligated with the care and custody of these individuals, not the county. So this is a big change. Never has our office or anybody in the county here been, or employed by the county, been responsible for this. So this is a major task, and multiple counties, I think almost every county in the state, is actively trying to seek change at a legislative level and to see how to best approach this. But there's trouble in multiple counties, and we're trying to accomplish what we're mandated to do. I'm not sure if there's time for questions. The chair.
A few moments.
Sure. So if anybody has any questions, or if I zoomed over some of those things, please let me know. Otherwise, my email's on the county website. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm currently the chair of the committee. So if you guys have any questions right now, I'd be happy to address those to the best of my ability.
Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just a little concerned that when the committee started initially, that it wasn't brought to the board to notify supervisors that the county was now responsible. I'm glad to see that we're hearing about it now, but I know there have been other supervisors that struggled with it like I did with my area. And I was wondering why we weren't notified earlier about this, but I do appreciate all the work you've done with me and my questions. I hope to see the frequently asked questions that you were discussing being up on the website to assist people when it comes into their district.
Sure, and those questions should be posted now. A couple days ago, I gave the okay to post those. In terms of right away, why it wasn't brought to the county board, the committee is a creature of statute. It's created by statute. It's not authorized necessarily by the county board. To be honest with you, we didn't really receive any notice really from the state. I had a fax. I, by chance, came across a fax on the machine regarding the supervised release. It was just the court order of this individual. If I hadn't seen that, we'd probably have the argument that we weren't served and have more time to place an individual. But I don't know that Department of Human Services was notified right away. But again, the main reason is because it's created by statute. I don't know at that time if there was any need to bring it to the board, but certainly the concerns that you've raised, I think, have since been rectified. We do have the website can be difficult to navigate, but we place the minutes. We've always placed the notice on the website. We've changed the name of the committee to give people an idea. At first, it was called the Temporary Release Committee, and people were saying we don't know what that is. So then it was changed to Temporary Release Committee for Sexually Violent Persons, pursuant to Chapter 980. So I understand your concerns, and I think that's actually it's happened in multiple counties. I know that in another county not far, they had a placement of an individual. Nobody knew about it until it already occurred, and then since that time, there's been litigation and the town's getting involved and being very upset about it. So I don't know if that answers your question sufficiently, but.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Supervisor Wilkie.
Follow up to the question that was just asked. Very early on in the process, this was brought before the administration committee, and we discussed it. In light of hindsight, it might have been better that also the administration committee could have, as you were suggesting, brought it to the full board. So very early on, it was brought to the administration committee, the issues that we were going to be facing.
Oh, thank you. And just to go off of that, Mr. Wilkie or Supervisor Wilkie, that was the thought was at the time if we were going to look at county-owned property, and we kind of diverted from that to road and tried to find other property in the community to try to avoid utilizing county-owned property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a presentation by Dr. Ruth Cronje and her class, the jail Data Blitz report.
Okay, thank you everybody for letting us come and present tonight. I'm not Dr. Ruth Cronje. Dr. Ruth Cronje is to my left, and we're going to just do some background information about where this committee started and what this committee is. So this is the Data Blitz Committee that was formed really out of the makings of the Poverty Summit that occurred in 2016-2017. And as a result of the Poverty Summit, through Clear Vision, two committees formed. One committee looked at mental health and poverty. The other looked at people who were incarcerated and issues of poverty. Our two teams formed, and we actually started to see a great deal of commonality in the tracks we were following, so we combined our efforts. Again, about 18 months ago, and began looking at opportunities where we could make some kind of impact into our community. So I just want to take a second to introduce the folks that have been involved in our team, and then turn it over to Dr. Cronje and her class, who are going to actually go through all of the different slides that we have of data that we have collected from both the Eau Claire County Jail, the Chippewa County Jail, and the Dunn County Jail. So team members that have been working with us, Luke Feedy, who is our clinic manager here at Eau Claire County. We have Father John Schultz. We also have Sarah Ferber. Sorry, said it a million times. But her middle name is Sarah. We also have Audrey Nelson and a few other folks who are not here. Becky Stendel, who is our jail reentry person back into the community. And so they are all going to participate in this presentation. But mostly our partner agency has been the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and Dr. Ruth Cronje has been really instrumental in leading that charge and putting together this cohort of students that are going to be presenting to you tonight. So Dr. Cronje.
Thanks, Tom.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to echo Tom's thanks to all of you for letting us come and share this project with you today. I want to talk a little tiny bit about the partnership that Tom has just referred to. As a professor at the university, I am actually a member of the Mental Health and Incarceration Justice team, but as a professor, I had the opportunity to design and deliver a course that enabled university students, including the honors students that you're seeing around the room and who will be standing up here in a few moments, sharing some data with you, get them involved in this public work as well. So just a little bit about what they did. We have set up a system where twice a year in October and in the spring, students enter the jail with the cooperation of the jail staff, and they gather data from any person who consents to speak with us who happens to be incarcerated during a 4-day sort of long weekend period. So this is a kind of point-in-time data blitz where we gather some data twice a year. Our hope is that over the years we'll be able to provide an ongoing stream of data that the county can use to support evidence-based decision-making about jail policy and practice. So that's what the partnership is set up to do. And I think, click one more time, Luke.
You got it.
Great, I got it all. So before I actually turn this over to my students and let them talk to you about the information they've gathered and what we've learned, I just want to say a thank you. We need to click, thanks, to the staff of the Eau Claire, Dunn, and Chippewa County jails. Without their cooperation and extra work, this project, this important community university alliance would not be possible. So, without any further ado, I want to turn it over to my students who are here tonight to share the data. These are my fall semester students that you'll be meeting tonight. They are going to share the data that they collected in the jail this past October. So this information is about 6 weeks old now. So I will turn it over to my students. Thank you so much.
Hello. Okay. We decided to start by looking at the data we collected on mental illness. We decided to use the Brief Jail Mental Health Screen in order to test for signs of possible mental illness in our jails. We decided to use this screen because it is a validated screen that is approved by the Stepping Up Initiative, which I'm aware that the Eau Claire County is in support of the Stepping Up Initiative, so we decided that it would be beneficial to include this screen as part of our data collection.
So the results you see on the screen right now are the results of this Brief Jail Mental Health Screen. And as you can see by the graphs, 63 out of the 83 individuals that we screened qualify for the full mental diagnostic workup. And this doesn't necessarily mean that these individuals have a mental illness. They just requires more of a workup to find that out, but they do qualify for that workup. So that's 76% of the individuals we screened. The next graph you see on the screen is the proportion of individuals we screened who have been in jail before, which is the bar to your left. And as you can see, 56 out of the 63 individuals, or 56 out of the individuals who have been in jail before also qualify for the full workup. And as you can see, there's a disproportionate amount of those who qualify for the mental workup that have been in jail before, comparing those to have not been before.
Before I go on with the inmate responses, I just want to make one thing clear. The Brief Jail Mental Health Screen does not, a positive result in the Brief Jail Mental Health Screen does not indicate that a person has a mental illness. It instead indicates that this person is in need of a full diagnostic workup. And while we were collecting our responses, we collected some comments in relation to the items on the screening. And our first response was in relation to an item that asked, within the past few weeks, have you felt useless or sinful? And one person responded, in here, yes, I feel useless or sinful. When I'm not working, I feel like I'm not doing my part and slipping away from community and things. I want to work construction on the weekends. Construction definitely makes people happy. We also received some comments in regard to medication. A question that asked, do you receive medication for mental illness? And one person responded, they do not allow some drugs in jail because of abuse. I was using drugs for PTSD, but not now. It was hard to go off of. And another person responded, not on meds at the moment. Jail won't give them to me.
And this is the results comparing this year's study to last year's study. As Dr. Cronje had mentioned before, this study was done once in the spring semester beforehand. These are in percentages, so the graph to the left is showing the data from this fall, where 76% of the individuals we screened qualify for the full mental health workup, where the data the graph to the left, or the right, excuse me, shows 70% of those, so very comparable graphs. And then the next set of data you will see is from other studies that we have researched over the course of our semester. And the first one deals with a study done in North Carolina this year. And that one was a study done across multiple bookings. And as you can see, there's 31% that qualify the workup compared to the 59%. But the numbers for this, they had a sample size of over 2,500, where our sample size was only 83. Then the middle graph was a study done in Switzerland, so different jail system, but 53% qualify for the workup, where 47 do not. And then the last graph to the furthest right is just a study done across the United States, and that had a sample size of about 20,000, and those results are 56% of individuals qualified for the full mental health workup.
So we also screen for ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. And these are potentially traumatic events that happen to a child before the age of 18. They include things such as physical and sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, parent separation, parental substance use, or parental incarceration. We used a validated instrument from the Wisconsin Behavioral Risk Factor Survey, also used and approved by the CDC. It includes questions such as, how often did a parent or adult in your home ever swear at you, insult you, or put you down? And how often did your parents or adults in your home ever slap, hit, kick, punch, or beat each other up? The highest score you could get was 8, and we split it into 2 groups, 3 or less and 4 or more. This is also done clinically, and we're interested in the incarcerated population in the group of 4 or more because research shows that if you experience 4 or more ACEs, you're at a much higher risk of many health concerns such as substance use and self or other inflicted violence. And then Luke is going to talk a little bit about how ACEs can affect a child.
Sure. Would you mind hitting the button?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we know. So one of the things that we know about chronic childhood stress is that it truly does have an impact on the growth of the brain. If you think about a child who's in a situation where they're experiencing chronic stress, they're living in that part of the brain that really focuses on fight, flight, or freeze. And so they don't have opportunities to really make those neural connections. So I like to compare it to a tree. Like a tree, it needs nurturing in order to grow. And so without the things that help ameliorate the impacts of ACEs, a brain doesn't have an opportunity to grow. So what we see oftentimes with children who have experienced traumatic stress, especially repeated traumatic stress, is they have a harder time using that rational part of the brain, the logical part of the brain, the things that sometimes some of us take for granted. And they really can't do some of that because they don't have that architecture built yet. The good news is there are really good things that can help ameliorate that and help with that neuroplasticity, and we'll talk a bit about those as well. So the important thing to take away are that adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, do have a physical impact.
Before I start talking about the results that we found, I just want to take a moment to say that this was the hardest part of the screening for most of us. We're asking people about deeply personal things that they often had no control over because it was before age 18. So yeah, with that, we found that most people we screened had the history of significant childhood trauma, with the numbers of 52 out of 84 having the high ACE score of 4 or more, and 32 people having the low scores of 3 or less. So a majority of the people we screened. And the next thing we found is that ACEs are associated with the need for the mental health diagnostic workup. We know that there's negative impacts like Luke talked about. This is another one of those, that there may be mental illness underneath. And you can see on our graph here that 39 of the people that qualified for the workup had the high ACE score, and 12 had high ACE scores but did not qualify. So just showing that there may be a relationship there.
So out of the 84 inmates we screened, 31 of them reported yes to living with someone who had been incarcerated. And we're interested in this because research shows that experiencing the ACE of parental incarceration exposes a child to nearly 5 times as many other ACEs. This type of ACE is also associated with experiencing 1 to 3 times more of an increased risk factor for a child's own adulthood incarceration. Along with parental incarceration, the other types of ACEs that expose a child to this are caregiver substance use and childhood maltreatment. Physical abuse is a category of childhood maltreatment, and when we asked our inmates of the Chippewa Valley how often a parent or adult in their home ever physically hurt them, many of them said daily, 3 to 4 times a week, entire life until age 18, can't count, and all the time.
And lastly, we just wanted to compare our results to the general population. The instrument that we use is also used by the CDC nationally, and we found that that was a disproportional comparison. 16% of people across the United States have the high ACE score of 4 or more, but in our jail system in the Chippewa Valley, we see 62% having that high ACE score of 4 or more.
All right, so next we're going to talk about resilience. Last spring we actually did not collect any data pertaining to resilience, so this is the first time that we are collecting resilience for the inmates. This semester when we were doing our research, we found a pretty good definition of resilience on the Resilience Research Center website, which states that in the context of exposure to significant adversity, resilience is the capacity of individuals to sustain their well-being. We decided to measure resilience this semester to see if these incarcerated individuals in the Chippewa Valley have the necessary factors to sustain their well-being after being released from prison. And the instrument that we used is called the Adult Resilience Measure Revised, or the ARM-R, from Dalhousie University. Also in our research, we could not find another study that used this in a prison setting, so we do believe we are one of the first people to be using this in the prison setting. So now we have some of our results from the ARM-R. And so the range of scores was the lowest you could score was a 17, and the highest you could score was an 85. So out of the 80 people that we were able to collect data from, because 4 of them did skip 1 question, 37 of those 80 had a low resilience score, 22 had a moderate resilience score, 6 had a high resilience score, and 15 had an exceptional resilience score. One interesting thing is that there were no comments from anybody who fell into the exceptional category, so we were able to pull some comments from the low and the high categories to make some comparisons. So an individual in the low resilience category stated that they feel like they do not belong, but as somebody in the high resilience category stated that they are a survivor.
So then we also looked at resilience linked to the need for a mental health workup. So 29 of the 37 individuals in the low category also qualified for a diagnostic workup, 18 of the 22 in the moderate category, 5 of the 6 in the high, and 8 of the 15 in the exceptional category. And an individual in the low resilience category stated that they have never been supported in life, and an individual in the high resilience category stated that their family supports them mentally, yes, financially, no. And then we also looked at the higher ACE score link to lower resilience. So 24 of the 37 individuals in the low category also had an ACE score of 4 and above. 14 of the 22 in the moderate category had an ACE score of 4 and above, 4 of the 6 in the high, and 7 of the 15 in the exceptional. At least 8 of the incarcerated individuals that fell into the low resilience category stated that they felt supported by their partner, but not their family. And an individual in the high resilience category stated that their family knows everything about them.
All right, so, excuse me.
The next items that we screened for were related to head injury, and we did this using a validated method as well, the Ohio State University TBI identification method, TBI referring to traumatic brain injury. So these were questions that basically gave us an idea of how many head and or neck injuries an individual had sustained and how it had affected them. This is a separate screen that is used to identify the need for further diagnosis, further work on individuals who have a TBI. We were not able to assess each individual separately and determine if they had had a traumatic brain injury. That would have taken more time than we had. So we just used this screen as a way to figure out how many people in our jail systems have experienced a head or neck injury. So we're going to be referring to it as head injury for our slides. And one thing we want to say before we get started is that brain injury does not cause criminal behavior. We cannot find any sort of causal relationships with our data. We only found correlations in relationships. And a head injury or a brain injury can predispose someone to potential behavioral issues or potentially also exacerbate behavioral issues or emotional issues that have already existed in the person prior to the head injury. So our first graph is just detailing the prevalence of head injuries in our county jail systems. All it says is that 66 out of 83 individuals screened reported that they had had at least one head or neck injury, while 17 out of the 83 reported that they had not. And this relates to national averages that we were researching before we collected our data. And the reason why it's such a large range of 51 to 82% for this national average is that the majority of the screeners used self-reports, and self-reports can be more unreliable than a clinician giving a screen, and that is why there is such a large range. A lot of people don't realize when they have had a brain injury or have had some sort of injury that could affect the way that their cognitive systems are working. So our data, the Chippewa Valley data was 79.5%. That is the 66 out of 83. Excuse me. So that puts us in that range, in the national average range, towards the higher end.
And another thing we looked into was how many people had multiple head injuries or had a loss of consciousness with their head injury, because those are two things. Having two or more or greater than two head injuries, as we saw 48 people did, is suggestive of having a moderate or severe traumatic brain injury. And also we found that 9 out of the 66 people who did report having a head or neck injury lost consciousness for greater than 30 minutes, which again, according to the Ohio State University identification method, is an indication that they had sustained a moderate or severe TBI.
Next, we examined the relationship between head injuries and mental health. Overall, we found that 65% of people who had never experienced a head injury qualified for a full diagnostic mental health workup. If we look at just people who had experienced a head or neck injury, we found that 79% of these individuals qualify. This increases to 80% if we include only those who had lost consciousness with one of their injuries. But then if we include just the loss of consciousness for greater than 30 minutes, it goes up to 89%. These very high numbers go with the national trends we found that as the severity of head injuries increase, so does the likelihood of a psychiatric diagnosis, namely depression, anxiety, or substance abuse. We couldn't examine that because we were only looking at a qualification for a full workup, but we did find that it increased. Next, we'll turn it over to housing.
So next we will be discussing housing, and we looked at homelessness as well as housing instability, and just an abbreviated description of homelessness is people that have no home or are living in a non-habitational place. And we measured this in many different ways, such as prior residences before they were in jail, safety measures, how safe they felt their belongings were, as well as how safe they felt, amenities such as having a toilet or a bed, as well as many other things, and residences when released, and what each inmate was planning on doing when they were released. So we looked at many individuals screening being reporting elements of housing instability. So housing instability is not homelessness. However, people that are homeless are considered housing unstable. So housing unstable means that you don't have a stable place to live, such as living in a motel, a hotel, or living on the street. There's many different things. So on the left, you can see that 58 out of the 84 people screened reported 1 or 2 residences in the past year. And on the right, you can see that 26 out of the 84 people screened reported 3 or more residences or no residence in the past year. No residence meaning that they were homeless. So although it is only 26 people out of the 84, that is still about 30% that we would consider to be housing unstable.
We also took a look at that many individuals face homelessness upon release. Others do not wish to return to their prior residences. So with this one, we did have one skip. So we only got 83 out of 84, but let's take a look at the categories and the responses. So beginning on the far left, we see that we got 38 responses for, would you like to return to your prior residences? On the one in the middle, got a response rate of 14 out of 83. Would you not like to return to your prior residences? And then on the far right, we got 31 responses indicating that they had no place to go. Now, what I'd really like you to take a look at is if you put, if you were to total the middle column and the right column together, you get a total of 45, which would exceed the farthest left column.
So we compared our findings to literature that we found as well. And in a study done by Culotte in 2008, we found that people who have been to prison just once experience homelessness at a rate nearly 7 times higher than the general public. But people who have been incarcerated more than once have rates 13 times higher than the general public. So just because somebody has been to jail or been to prison does not necessarily mean that they are homeless, but based on the study that we found for Eau Claire County as well as the surrounding counties, we found, as well as with the literature, that more often than not, these are correlated.
I don't know if you guys could see me waving way back there, but I'm Becky Stendal. I'm the jail reentry social worker. This team asked me to join to do a little bit more qualitative data to their presentation. So at the end of November, I had approximately 276 referrals from the jail, and about 67% of them reported some sort of housing need. Most of the time what I hear is that they can't return home. It could be that they were living with mom and mom won't let me come back. They were living with a partner and they're now in a no contact with their partner. They just don't want to go back to be living with that partner. Safety of the previous residents. I hear that a lot. That middle category was surprising to me because a lot of times people will tell me, I have a place to go, I just know I shouldn't go back there. I hear all the time, I could literally walk 2 blocks from here and have somewhere to go tonight, but I should not go there, and I know that. But they feel like that's the only option that they have. And then I have quite a few people tell me that they've been homeless, that they're going to be homeless when they get out. They've been homeless for months. They've been homeless for years. And I hear a lot of, the resilience of they're just kind of used to that type of thing. But quite a few people who were homeless before they came in, and they're going to be homeless when they get out. So
next we will have the next group talk about educational attainment.
Okay, so the take-homes that we got from the importance of educational attainment is that staying in high school is critical. Looking at the research that we looked through books, specifically a book called Dropping Out by Russell Rumberger, they showed that the statistics, the non-high school graduates are 2 times more likely to report having committed a crime or being arrested compared to high school graduates. Based on our data, 42 of the people have a pretty low education, being that of a high school diploma or less. And just some qualitative data that we got from our reports were that some of them didn't even complete 7th grade. And then we compared it to employment.
So when we were comparing our data with education and employment, our definition of education was a high school diploma, and our definition of employment was anything from part-time to full-time employment. When we look at the employed, 38 of those have received at least a high school education. Well, no, when we looked at employed, 6 of those, sorry about that, 6 of those have not received a high school education, and 38 of those individuals have. And when we look at the unemployed, we have 31 who have achieved at least a high school diploma and 9 who have not. We also want to reiterate that with our data, we had 82 individuals in our education because 2 of those skipped questions.
Next, what we looked at was the emergency room use by the inmates in the year prior to their arrest. We thought this was important because the solid proportion of the inmate population tends to have not great access to health care, and so they tend to use the ER, which is a very expensive and not quite good treatment for them. So we asked them 3 different questions where we asked them about if they used the ER in the year prior to their arrest, the location of it, and how often they had used it. So in our first graph, what we found was that 39 out of the 84 people said that they had used the ER in the year prior to their arrest. This ends up being to be about 46%. Now, in the second graph, what we have is 3 comparative studies who asked the same question of did a survey of inmates use ER in the year prior to the arrest. So for the first one, Chodos et al., they found that 73% of their inmates surveyed used ER in the year prior to the arrest. Hiller et al. Found 35%. And Wong et al. Found 66%. So that just shows that our 46% of our inmates surveyed in the Chippewa Valley falls right in this data comparatively.
So through our data, we were also able to gather where in which emergency rooms these individuals used. So the first 4 graphs on there show ER services within the Eau Claire area, and that is 72% of people who have used an ER used it within the Eau Claire area. And then also we were able to screen how many times within the year prior to their arrest that they used these ER services, 1, 2, or 3 or more. And surprisingly, we found 41% of the people who did use ER services used it more than 3 times in the year prior to their arrest.
We then compared the brief jail mental health screen with the ER use that we found from our results, and of the 35 people that do qualify for brief jail mental health, 30 of them used an ER in the past year. That comes to a total of 86% of our data, which is comparable to the 80% that report a physical, mental, or substance abuse problem that comes from a national survey.
Okay, so next we took a look at employment. So we surveyed our participants about their employment status 2 weeks prior to their incarceration, and we also asked them about the amount of hours they were working. So if they were unemployed, part-time, full-time, or more than full-time. We wanted to take a look at employment because it's influenced by many different factors. One study that we found, Raumacher's 2014, states that prisoners experience higher rates of poverty, unstable employment, and unemployment.
All right, so the first question involving employment that we asked in our study was, in the 2 weeks prior to your arrest, did you have paid employment? And what I want to point out on this slide is 39 out of 84 people said they did not have employment before their arrest. And this is an unemployment rate of 46.4%. And I just want to compare this to the average unemployment rate of Wisconsin, which is 3.2%. And the second question we asked involving employment was, how many hours of work did you have per week? And the options being part-time, full-time, more than 40 hours, and no paid employment. And what I want to point out on this slide is 37 people who answered no paid employment differs by 2 from the first slide I showed you, as 2 people skipped this question.
So
So then we went about comparing our data with some of the other data that we collected, and the first thing we did was compare it with those, the data we collected about ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. And just as a reminder, we had low as being 3 or less and high as being 4 or more. So with those who answered and reported that they did not have paid employment, we see that 25 out of the 37 of responses that we were able to get on this one responded that, or also scored high ACEs, and that comes out to about 67% as compared to those who did have paid employment, 24 out of 44, which is only about around the 50%, 52% range. So we see a higher rate there. And we also compared it with those who qualified for a diagnostic workup. So we see that those who did not have paid employment reported no employment. 33 out of the 38 in this case that we got responses from also qualified for that mental health diagnostic. So that's around the 88% of those who did not have employment who also qualified for that workup. And as Erin stated, mental health, in some of the research that we've seen, mental illness and unemployment have been found to have a relationship. And though what we gathered for our data does not, with the brief jail mental health screen, does not necessarily explicitly say that they have a mental illness, we do see that comparison and that relationship between employment and mental health.
So the next risk factor that we looked at was incarceration in children, because it is believed that exposure to incarceration during childhood can have long-lasting effects on the child. So specifically, we looked at how it causes housing instability in the children, and also how it creates ACEs in those children, which then snowball into other forms of ACEs as well. So first, we looked at removal of children from the homes of inmates. And a study by Henderson in 2010 found that the more housing instability experienced, the more risk there is for future mental and behavioral problems. So for our data, the first question we asked is just if they had children or not, where we had 65 individuals say yes, they had children, and 19 say no, they did not. The next question we asked was, if you have kids, has a child in your custody ever been removed from your home? And I just want to point out that here our sample size was only 63 because they had to respond yes to having children, and 2 also skipped this one. But we showed that 15 individuals had a child that had been removed and 48 had not. 2 of the inmates also had comments to these questions saying it was shared custody, but they're now sole custody of mother, and voluntarily gave up rights for a few months to get clean. So both of these cases, it was maybe a good idea for the child to be removed, but it still does cause that housing instability and the ACE for the child.
So the next thing we looked at was whether they were removed from their homes as a child, whether their parents were responsible for anything. And our study showed that of the 84 people that we asked, 22 of them said that they were removed from the custody of their parents, and 62 were not. And we also got a few comments for this one saying I was put into disciplinary foster care, not legally, but my grandparents took care of me because my mom was a drug user. And I wasn't removed, but should have been. My dad was a heroin addict, and my parents grew weed. And then the final question we researched was part of our ACEs screen, and we asked if they had lived with someone as a child who was put in jail or another correctional facility. And this is compared to a national survey of over 3,000 participants. So of the 84 participants that we had, 37% of them said that they did live with someone who had served time, and that is comparable to the 7% of the national survey that answered yes to the same question. And this is especially significant due to the what was previously said about how if your parents had served time, you are 5 times more likely to be exposed to certain ACEs compared to your counterparts.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Ferber. A lot of information to take in, right? So I'm excited about this, to kick this off in partnership with Ruth and the team from the Poverty Summit, because I know that the best place for us to get our answers and solutions to these problems is to talk to the folks that are going through it. I know I've been before you saying those exact words on other topics, so I just say it again today just to reiterate that point. So you, of course, it's a lot of stuff to take in, but you have these slides available to you. But we want to have a few take-homes for you to remember and really think about. So it's reasonable to assume most individuals incarcerated in Eau Claire County Jail have significant histories of childhood trauma. I know that's my experience, and when I was incarcerated, it was a lot of the stories that I heard from folks that were in there, and also now that I'm back in the community working with folks, it's also the experience I'm hearing from a lot of the people I work with. All first responders and criminal justice personnel should receive trauma-informed care training, and we should allocate resources to enable them to implement that training. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. The Eau Claire County DOJ should initiate BJMHS for everyone at booking. So that's the brief mental health screen, correct? So I know that they do some form of mental health screen just for safety purposes, but as you can see from these test results, it's really important that we see where people are at as far as their mental health. And I know Eau Claire County is committed to this with the Stepping Up initiative. And I think this screen is a specific step that we can take to see if the folks are in the place that they're supposed to be. I mean, is jail really the place for someone who has a severe mental illness? We'll need resources for complete mental health diagnostic workup, counseling, and diversion. Now, this might cost some money up front. This is the challenge that you guys face every year when you do the budget document. But I feel confident that in the long run, it will save us money. And it'll save us future resources in these children so that we're not continuing the cycle of ACE scores in these kids, right, as the previous presenters just discussed. Another one is significant numbers of individuals we screened rely on emergency rooms and may lack access to preventative care. So these are not folks that have a regular doctor. I might be unique in that, I've had the same doctor since my oldest son was born, but a lot of these folks do not have that, right? They're going into our ERs. And so thinking about how we can partner with the medical institutions that we have here in town to help cover some of these costs, right? This is not just it's your responsibility, it's a community responsibility, and how can we be creative in those resources, finding those resources. And last but not least, it's responsible to assume that allocating resources upstream will reduce pressure on the criminal justice system. So, we have great treatment courts. We honored some judges earlier tonight. We've done a fabulous job here in Eau Claire County, and I don't foresee that changing anytime in the near future, but that should not be what's holding all this weight, right? We should be spreading this out, and we should be finding ways to get people the care that they need in the community rather than, shoving everybody in the jail. So thank you, and I'll pass it along to the final presenter tonight.
Lastly, we just want to talk a little bit about another subject matter we covered in class, and that is public work. This project is a public work project that allowed us to go directly into the community and to do a little bit of hands-on work that kind of bridges the gap between the citizens and you guys, because you guys as representatives can't do everything. So I believe there's a take-home packet of this slide in your packet thing, but some points. We think that representatives should be accessible and responsive to the public, promote easy and frequent citizen-to-board interaction, promote citizen-to-citizen networking on issues, and promote public work partnerships among the Eau Claire County agencies, institutions, etc. These are all just some suggestions to help bridge the gap between citizens and supervisors. We learned a lot in this class about what you guys actually do, and even about the criminal justice system in the jail. A lot of these concepts were foreign to me, and we just kind of dived in with this public work project, and I think it'd be great to see a lot more people in the community participating in things like this. A lot of the solutions that we talked about tonight might be community-based, and public work projects can help support that. So with that, that's the conclusion of our presentation.
Thank you.
you have a concluding remark?
I don't. I'm just. Well, thank you again, and thank our students for all their work. This as well.
Thank you, Dr. Krenz. The next item on our agenda is, well, you have the written reports in your packet. You have the 2019 contingency report, the November 2019 payments over $10,000, and the update on wind energy from Rob Esslinger. The next item on our agenda is under item 10, reports of standing committees, commissions, and boards under 2.04.160, and second reading of ordinances. First is file 81.
To amend section 2.04.030D of the code, rule 3, opening of meeting, and to amend section 2.04.120A of the code, rule 12, standing committees.
Motion. Motion by Supervisor Beckfield, second by Supervisor Gatman. I think we have a proposed amendment. Who would be making the amendment? It's in your packet, but I think we need a motion to amend.
I can explain if you can.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I always do that.
Let's get together. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm responsible for the proposed amendment. I originally drafted the ordinance and then I reviewed it. And the language as drafted in the original amendment in subsection 2, which deals with the chair of the board being an ex officio non-voting member of all standing committees. And after drafting it, having it come to the Committee on Administration, and then coming before the board for the first time, I read it again. I thought, well, you could read that another way, that the board chair would be then become a non-voting member of all the committees. And so I drafted an amendment which was signed by Chair Smear, indicating that what we're going to do is add the language that he or she is not otherwise a member of. So the entire change would read, the chair of the board shall be an ex officio non-voting member of all standing committees that he or she is not otherwise a member of. So those things those committees where he is a member, he or she is a member, he would remain a voting member of, but any other committee that is a standing committee, he would be an ex officio member and non-voting member.
Chair is looking for someone to make that amendment. Supervisor Beckfield making the amendment.
So read by our attorney, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you. Second, Supervisor Anderson. We'll handle the amendment first. Any questions, discussion of the amendment? Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Beckfield, your light is in the, do you want to comment on this? Sorry. Okay. I see no other requests to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on the amendment to file 81. Supervisor Chilson. Right. Okay. It is unanimous. Thank you. We are back to the main motion, file 81 as amended. Is there any discussion or are there any questions regarding file 81? I see no request to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 81 as amended. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is file 77.
To amend section 18.55.200 of the code, groundwater protection overlay district, Village of Fall Creek.
Motion by Supervisor Leary, second by Supervisor Lavelle. Supervisor Gibson, are you speaking to this or? Okay. You're on.
Okay, this was a resolution that came from the Village of Fall Creek requesting their wellhead protection district for their water recharge areas that lie outside of its municipal boundaries. Groundwater Advisory Committee reviewed this and they recommended to the county board adoption of this revision. Committee on Planning and Development also had a public hearing on this and voted to recommend approval of this ordinance.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or are there any questions regarding this file? This motion, sorry. Seeing none, supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 77. Sorry? Oh, I can't, sorry, I can't hear that. Is there a buzzing sound?
Yeah, there is.
I'm getting a high sign from our... We're just going to proceed.
Yeah.
I've been working in minors for 15 years, so I'm kind of used to it, and I'm going to ask you for your tolerance of this. We'll do this as simply as we can. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay. Next item is file 86.
What?
Oh.
Authorizing submittal of the municipal dam grant application with the Wisconsin DNR by February 28, 2020, directing the Parks and Forest Director to take all steps necessary to comply with the grant requirements.
Motion, Supervisor Schaffnagel, second Supervisor DeLuca. Comment, Supervisor Stelzis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was recently discovered that we were having some mechanical problems operating the gates at the Lake Eau Claire Dam. That was hindering smooth operation for water control on that. And upon inspection by the DNR, they actually said that it was mandatory that we take action on that. The estimated cost of the total project is somewhere in the order of $15,000. If we authorize this resolution, we can apply for a 50% co-op grant from the state. So that's what this resolution does. The remainder of the funds that we would have to pay from the county, we will try to supplement out of the existing Parks and Forest budget or request another source of funds to be determined at a later date. But we do need to take action on this prior to June of this coming year, as mandated by the DNR.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion? Supervisor Pagonis.
I just want to know if the DNR is committed to the 50%.
Well, we haven't applied for the grant yet, so we don't know.
But aren't they telling us we have to do it?
Yes, they're telling us we have to fix the dam.
Okay. So they may or may not help us fix it.
Right. They're telling us that we have to do it is not tied to the grant. It's just good business that we apply for it.
All right, good idea.
I see no other requests to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand. Vote on file 86. Thank you. Supervisor Henning. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is a series of appointments, beginning with the Eau Claire County Housing Authority. As chair, I make these appointments and I look for motions for approval. So I have appointed Phil Swanhorst to the Eau Claire County Housing Authority, and I look for a motion. Supervisor Bates, you're signaling something to me. Sorry.
Can we take them all at the same time?
Well, I hesitate to do that. I think we can do them very quickly if we pay attention and ignore the ringing in our ears. So, yes, could I have a motion regarding the appointment to the Housing Authority? Supervisor Cronk, second by Supervisor Dunning. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. We'll do it by voice vote. Opposed by nay? Thank you. It's unanimous. Next is appointment to the Local Emergency Planning Committee. That appointment is Robert King. Motion. Supervisor Anderson, second. Supervisor Mowry. Any question, discussion? All those in favor of appointment of Phil Swan?
Aye.
Robert King, sorry, lost there. Indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee. This is an appointment of Supervisor Lavelle. Motion, Supervisor Bates, second, Supervisor Wilkie. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. Aging and Disability Resource Center Board, appointment of Dr. Catherine Schneider. Excuse me, Supervisor Schneider. Right? I'm sorry, I'm looking at Supervisor Schneider. She's been correcting me all night. You got that? Okay. Motion, Supervisor Mowry. Second, Supervisor Gatman. Any discussion, question? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. And the final appointment is the Committee on Human Resources, and also an appointment of Supervisor Schneider. Motion, Supervisor Lavelle. Second, Supervisor Henning. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. It is unanimous, and we have one. We have, you have an amendment to the agenda, appointment of Human Resources Director Jessica Rubin. I'm appointing her. We're looking for that approval. So motion by Supervisor Beckfield, second by Supervisor Bates. Any question or discussion regarding this appointment? You have information in your addendum. Any questions? I see none. All those in favor of the appointment of Jessica Rubin as Human Resources Director indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. I hear no. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. That is the end of our agenda. We are adjourned.
You too.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689. Or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715